Hello everyone, this is Splinter. We're here to do a live first time reaction to Baked Bongo's competitive multiplayer guide for Japan. A bit about myself, I'm main UK on Bake's server, so this will kind of be an interesting comparison between the two island nations, two island majors within the game. Um, I don't play Japan, so this is kind of an interesting view from my point of view to see the other side of the world. But I think the kind of the skills required to play both UK and Japan are probably lined up pretty well. So I'm very interested to see where this goes, and hopefully I get to make fun of Baked a little bit along the way and hear what jokes he gets to pull. Alright, let's start the video.
I'm a degenerate, my hair is growing in patches, and I'm frustrated to say the least. Might as well teach people to play a fucking map game. Sup guys? Welcome to the ripe, rich, and autistic world of Hearts of Iron 4. I decided to take a break from sifting through the garbage cans outside for the sloppy seconds of the used condom the homeless man that lives in the alley down the street used to pork a dog, and bring you a Hearts of Iron 4 tutorial for competitive multiplayer. That's right, competitive. That means, generally speaking, rules and skilled players. Anyway, we're going to be starting off with a new multiplayer series, taking
Skilled players can be a little bit debatable sometimes, but generally, yes.
a look at the great nations of Hearts of Iron 4. Today we're starting off with the best nation of all, Japan.
Please do a UK. That'll be something I can really sink my teeth into. Please do it.
My main. That's right. Jaboy's a filthy weeb. I was inspired to make this video by I was actually watching another Hearts of Iron YouTuber, and he made a few tutorial videos about all the various majors in the game, and well, they were just disgusting. And a lot of people on my Discord community that I run agree that it's a big meme. This YouTuber is going to remain nameless. I watched his Japan video, and his...
Yeah, agreed. Some of those videos are pretty trash tier. Like, the big problem I find with a lot of multiplayer guides myself is they don't really explain the strategic importance of certain nations or where you really need to be getting into the right headspace of where you want to perform. I think if I ever did like a UK guide, it would be like 6 different parts, like half hour each. There'll be like a whole part just talking about the strategic importance of playing in the African campaign and how to best utilize things. So in that case, I'm very interested to hear how does Baked compare the style of content between the YouTuber that will remain nameless and his own content. Let's see how this goes.
Very unique take on the game. It surprised me. It inspired me. I mean, clearly, I just don't have the same level of transcendence that he does in order to comprehend the strategies that he chooses to use, despite everyone in the multiplayer community telling him he's wrong. He still goes above and beyond us all, and I think he's clearly surpassed us. However, I guess this guide is more for...
Yes, this I think I completely agree. This is going to be the more low tier guide. a guy that you can understand and actually work.
Those of us who've not quite transcended to his level, and we want to be playing HoI4 while he's out here playing fucking checkers or whatever. Like that's what level he's on. He's surpassed HoI4, he surpassed 3D chess. He's just playing another fucking game. And we need to respect that, but at the same time, I think a good guide that actually helps people who haven't transcended and experienced a whole new reality.
And that's what we're here for today. That should be very interesting.
always necessary. Let's do a fucking tutorial, I guess. Whatever. Just fuck it. Just jump right in. Alright.
Speed of an SSD. Very nice.
So, this is Japan. The rising sun. The weebs in the east, as, you know, some like to refer to them as. We're going to start off taking a look at the national focus orders as Japan. Your focus order is pretty simple. Started off with Purge the Kadoa faction. This is the historical route. Then followed up with Guide the Zaibutsus. National mobilization law to switch you to early war economy. National research policy, since the majority of your country is too busy studying the blade to really pick up a...
I think that's pretty much correct. I think a generic rule for every nation is always go for your research slots unless you have a very specific kind of plan in mind. An example of that would probably be something like South Africa rushing their tanks before they get their research slot. But for a major who's going to kind of spread his research out wide, I think that's definitely correct.
A book, and you're kind of behind on research, so you're going to need the early research as soon as possible. Nationalize war industry for a few extra mills and civs. National defense state for total mob and to become the first and only nation in the world on total mob. Then spiritual mobilization's optional. You can stop at total mob or not. It depends on the player.
Yeah, I think as soon as you see anything to do with recruitable population, I think this would be a definite miss. Like, you got over a million men. Like, when are you going to be hitting that cap anytime soon? I think this is a definite miss till later.
I personally go to spiritual mob just because total mob drops your manpower.
Ooh, okay, that's probably a good caveat there. I think I would like to actually see it. We'll wait till he shows the drop to total mob and see if that's still worth it. That drop is going to be what? A third? I still don't think it'll be worth it, but I think I would like to visualize it.
Power by a considerable bit. Alright, after that, it's time to take out, you know, your built-up, pent-up aggression you have against Chinese people. So, you take Liaison Conference first, Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere, and then Marco Polo Bridge incident is where you can get all that suppressed rage that you have built up ever since that one Chinese kid that pushed you over when you were 5 and said, for the last goddamn time, I'm not Chinese, I'm Hispanic, you idiot. Fuck you, Jesus, you Chinese bastard. After Marco Polo Bridge incident, you're going to take a look over at new naval estimates, start getting yourself some naval dockyards, and you're going to work your way down towards the 0. So you do no naval estimates, fighter modernization, then agility focus. That's very important because you're going to want that.
Oh, juicy agility. Yum, yum, yum.
Air designer. Best air designer in the game. Make sure you pick it up before you grab the 0 because of the massive agility bonus it gives to carrier fighters and normal fighters. Then you do carrier warfare experiments, first air fleet, the 0. After the 0, it's kind of up to you what focus order you do. It depends on how heavy into, or what your naval build is, or what you're planning to do next. Plan on generally going for a 1941 early to mid 1941 war with the Allies, as most servers will sort of recommend or require. So keep that in mind when choosing your focuses. I personally like to jump right into going down to torpedo cruisers, both for the torpedo cruiser to put in my navy and then for the Long Lance torpedo, which is one of the best naval national.
If I recall correctly, the unique torpedo boat that Japan gets is a light cruiser model, but you can pretty much stack all the modules with torpedoes, unlike the regular cruiser model. So that kind of why it makes it OP. I could probably get onto a long rant about the naval combat, but I'm pretty sure Bake said in this game he wasn't really planning, well, in this tutorial he wasn't planning to attach the kind of naval discussion to it, so I might leave that for another day.
Spirits in the game if you're going heavy into torpedoes. After that, before you declare war on the Allies,
I might just add one other thing here, talking about if you're going heavy in torpedoes. I think as any nation, you should always lean into your strength as a nation. Either go heavy on torpedoes or don't go torpedoes at all. Like if you got a strong national focus like you do, either exploit it or use it, or just don't put any effort into it at all. Like you always want to be the master of something. If you kind of spread yourself out too thin, you're gonna find yourself not really succeeding in any one place.
Make sure you get warrior spirit and supremacy of will. Basically, if you grab supremacy of will if you're afraid that your swords aren't making a satisfying enough shing sound as you pull them out of their blades, and you want to be able to insta-kill anybody with the power of pure anime cringe. That's what it does to your divisions. After you take China, make sure you get the developed Chinese resources focus, because it gives you a lot of decisions to get extra aluminum and steel, which are...
Yeah, so definitely for your aircraft. I'm interested at this stage what economy law, oh, sorry, not economy, the trading status is, because I think usually it's supposed to be limited, but I've also seen some builds where you go free trade just to get all the extra construction, then switch off it. This is probably an area that I'm kind of interested to hear more about.
You're going to kind of need. Beyond that, that covers all the important ones. So let's move on to research. Your early game research, it's dependent on a few factors, but I like to personally bolster my industry as much as I can. So I start with, and as well as research rate. So start off by taking electronic mechanical engineering, then going down to mechanical computing. For industry, on your second slot, you're going to want to grab basic machine tools. So let me grab that real quick. Third slot, you're going to want to get construction 1. Your fourth slot, you're going to grab tack bombers. Sometimes you can make an argument to do this later. I personally prefer to grab them immediately so I can start building them for the China War. These slots, basic machine tools, you're going to go immediately down into concentrated industry. Never take dispersed industry unless you're a miner that needs to like doing tanks, and you need to rapidly switch production lines. Otherwise, you just get so much more efficiency from concentrated industry. It's way more...
Pretty much I agree there. I think your other option possibly besides the bombers might be start heading down your land doctrine as well. But I think it's probably the correct move. I'm kind of interested to hear how the bombers are used in the China War. Is it mainly the extra range for the close air support, or are we actually looking to bomb forts or bomb infrastructure in order to lower the org of the Chinese divisions? Quite interested to hear more.
More worth it, or more output, I mean. So you want to go machine tools, concentrated 1, and then concentrated 2 right after that. Ahead of time researched it a little bit. Same with the construction 1, immediately down to construction 2, and then go from there. With your fourth slot, after you research the tack bomber 1s, I recommend do logistics company, and then after that, just go land doctrine for the rest of the game. When researching your land doctrine, after researching your logistics company, you're going to want to do superior firepower doctrine. This is because it is hands down the strongest doctrine for buffing up soft attack, which is the core stat for pushing, and essentially killing people, for lack of better words. The other doctrines have their uses, but superior firepower is hands down the best way to go. You're going to want to follow it down the right tree and then down the left tree, as you're going to be relying mostly on your Air Force, and you want that 20% air superiority bonus from here. When your 5th research slot rolls in, you're going to want to grab radio and then signal company. Those are going to get you all of the logistics and sort of support companies you're going to need for your divisions to take on China.
So far, I pretty much completely agree. I know there's a lot of logistics issues that can occur in China, so I think these are all musts for making your elite infantry, especially fighting around Asia.
After that, research is really up to you. I strongly recommend once you have some air XP, start investing in air doctrine. You're going to want to go strategic destruction air doctrine because, well, first off, that's the meta air doctrine because it gives the same agility bonuses as operational integrity, but it gives more air superiority bonuses. I would only recommend going down it, especially because you're pressed for research. Go air superiority, infrastructure destruction, naval strike tactics, and then dogfighting experience. Stop at multi-altitude flying and don't really go past that unless you, really want to. But I'd personally save the air XP you get.
Uh, the next one below it is more air superiority. Like, you can kind of... He may be specifically talking about before the China War around here, but I think by the time you're looking to push into Singapore, a very contested air zone, I think any buff you can get that's not too far away that boosts your air superiority. I think this would be a definite must for Singapore.
Get from China to upgrade your zeros and then later TAC Bomber 2s. So upon grabbing the research for the TAC Bomber 1s, pop over to Germany, request a license production from him. Make sure you get a trade back for this. I almost forgot to do this, so I'm going to add this in right here. As part of your research, naval doctrine that you're going to want to do.
I was actually going to mention this. I'm like, oh, he does like no early stuff. Like it's not bad grabbing something nice and early, just so while you're spending all this time with the dockyards you do have, you're actually building something useful. You know, you really don't want to be spending much time building useless stuff.
It depends on what build you're going for. Me personally, I like to go for a bit more trade interdiction and convoy stopping of the allies, especially when taking islands and such, because that's the best way to take the islands, cause no supply to go there so the divisions take attrition, as well.
I'll probably throw in my own 2 cents here with the naval kind of doctrines here. I guess specifically leaning towards the Asian theatre. I think base strike, which is the buffing to your carriers, I think you're really trying to take the fight to the Americans at this stage. You're kind of trying to push horizontally across towards maybe like Hawaii and Wake Island and those kind of areas. Trade interdiction, I think you're going to be fairly defensive. You're going to be trying to stay near kamikaze zones and using light, fast strike forces to go and basically interdict the trade of the allies, which can be extremely effective, particularly if the UK is integrated Singapore. You can be highly effective there. This is obviously buffs to destroyers and your cruisers, so this is going to boost your torpedo boat. Fleet and being, I think this is when you're going to be building like a tall, wide battleship formation. Still somewhat defensively, but if you can push out your screen of aircraft into the Pacific and bait the Americans to fight under your air superiority, fleet and being can be extremely powerful, especially getting into the armor of and org of the battleships. Interested to hear what kind of Baked thinks of that kind of breakdown, particularly with the industrial power of the United States. I think air power is the key. Like, choosing which navy you're going to do is also based on choosing your style of using your air power.
Well as sink UK convoys, making it harder for them to trade with their Commonwealth, cutting off Australia, British Raj, and New Zealand, as well as taking all the convoys that UK is getting from Singapore, essentially cut off the rubber trade. So I do trade interdiction. I focus down the submarine path first, and then I go for the raider patrols until finally naval air or the carrier operations one. You don't really have to do this so much. I would do it for the sub detection, primarily an escort efficiency. But other than that, I mean, there's not a whole bunch of point to it. Primarily the right tree and then the left tree. However, if you want to have a more combat-focused Navy where you really want to contest the American fleet, I would recommend doing Fleet and Being, as this is probably the best doctrine for it. Don't do Base Strike, because Base Strike bolsters up carriers, and carriers are pretty ass in Man the Guns. They used to be really good, but they're just not worth it anymore. So
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. Like, this is only if you're trying to bait them into the middle of the Pacific where there isn't any adjoining aircraft, but you're the reactor. Sorry, you're the active party in the battle. The Americans have to react to you, so it should be fairly simple for you to try to bait them into a fight that you want to do. Maybe this is again more of my UK background coming out here, but I'd probably lean towards fleet and being. I'd want to try to do a decisive battle against the Americans, but we'll see what Bake says. I think that's just debatable and down to play style. I think definitely with torpedo boats, harassing them, forcing the Americans to have to do something, engage them out under kamikazes, you'd crush the Americans.
So dedicate some time, naval XP, and research into one of these two trees. So right out the gate, if you notice, Japan has 60 divisions at the start. That is 59 too many. Shift-click on the unassigned divisions at the top, throw them in an army, grab this top division right here, put them in a separate army, then select all divisions in the first army and disband them. You're going to be doing something called one division training, which is essentially earning early game army XP while only having to train one division and getting the same amount of XP as if you were training a whole army of the same type of division based on the way that army XP is generated. For those of you that don't know, army XP is generated based off the percentage of your total army that's exercising, as well as how many battalions are in that division. So the bigger the division, the more army XP you're going to get. The best way to maximize this, as well as ensure you have enough troops for China, exercise your HoI4 division. Then when you get the chance, go to your template right off the bat, duplicate it, save it as something, just garrison or whatever you want to save it as.
Pretty much, yeah. Everything here is completely correct. I think anyone who's in a competitive multiplayer, I don't know, environment, if that's the right word, like, this is something that you need to know how to do. Pretty much every nation does one division training. I know particularly from the allies, I don't think there's no country that would not do one division training. Know it, love it, get good at it. The kind of high skilled version of it is ensuring that you know when to duplicate your template that you're training at the correct time. Pretty much an extremely important skill to kind of be able to do it without thinking, so you can concentrate on other stuff.
But that's basically what this is, and put it aside. Now this HoI4 template is going to be kind of what you're building up to a 14-4. You want it to be 14 infantry and 4 artillery. And then this garrison division is going to be a 20 width. The 14-4 should look something like this. You're also going to add logistics and support companies to it. Every 5 army XP, make sure you add more to it until it gets to max size.
The template itself, again, I completely agree. This is like the standard elite infantry template. The artillery and the soft attack, you're designed to push into other infantry against tanks or other kind of light to medium armored vehicles. It's going to be complete trash for the most part, but the vast majority, like, I don't think you'll run into any armor in Asia. Pretty much never. So definitely for a Japan point of view, this is most definitely correct.
For the garrison division, going to remove these two. and then remove the recon company. And
Yep, so standard just wall. We're trying to keep organization quite high. Defense is pretty high. We just want to entrench in. The idea here is if the enemy invaders never get onto the beach, then they're never a threat to you. Soft attack is never really too bad when it comes to actual infantry fighting, but you're not dealing a lot of damage with this unit. You're literally just holding your ground. Don't let them onto the beach.
it should look something like that. For industry buildup, right at the start of the game, you're going to be building civilian factories, and you're going to want to build these until late 39, early 1940.
This actually is quite interesting because I have heard a lot of things about people kind of switching to mills to help with the China War. I think this is something you definitely want to be practiced at. You want to be confident with your ability to push in and into China. This may have changed since my time kind of hearing about how the Japan-China war goes, but I'm quite interested to see what kind of army you're able to produce with just your starting mills.
So you're going to start by building them in your highest infrastructure provinces, Kanto, Kansai, then after that, Chugoku and Tokai, and you're going to leave it there. As you get concentrated industry later on in your research tree, you're going to want to continue to fill up civs in your high infrastructure provinces. Once you grab the first concentrated...
Unless Bake mentions it very soon, the reason why we're doing the higher infrastructure areas is because there's a slight buff to speed. Usually not enough that it's worth it to build infrastructure in to actually get that extra speed, unless it's something like if it's a 3 and there's 10 building slots, only like something like that would be worth it.
Industry tech, fill up the rest of the civs in Kansai. Then you're going to want to go over to Dalian, upgrade that port to level 10, and build a level 5 airbase here. Like so. So you're going to want those extra civs in Kansai, and then do this. That way you have enough supply during the China War in order to take down China. Especially since we're doing we're not really naval invading in this China War. We're going to be more pushing from the north. You're going to need that supply. Starting production-wise, all right, so you're starting industry. You're going to want to put about 6 factories on guns. You're going to want to switch this over to your freshly licensed TAC bombers from Germany. Put 5 factories on those, and then once you research your own TAC bombers, you're going to swap that over to yours. Then the rest of your factories...
A very key thing about doing that is order highly matters. You want to switch production to your newly researched TAC bombers and then cancel the license. That way you only get a slight efficiency drop. But if you do it the other way, it'll be like you're starting a brand new line of bombers. So this is a pretty important skill to be able to get correct.
Factories go on artillery. From here, you're going to want to put 3 more mills on support equipment, 1 more on infantry, 1 on trucks, then the rest on artillery. This will be your industry pre-China War. As the war with China is going on, I would recommend either upping equipment as you need based on what's negative. If you're positive in artillery, cut back on artillery, up guns, etc. Just micro your production early on. As the China War is going on and you gain more mills from capturing land in China, bump this up to about 15 to 20 factories on TAC bombers. For your early naval production, I would delete all the early submarines.
I don't know. Like there's a lot of stuff here that's fairly highly completed. Even trash tier subs can be used to be thrown out in kind of key locations. Not sure. Like unless he's putting these dockyards into something very useful right now, I think I probably disagree here. Definitely drop this down to a 1. Like don't build the trash stuff from the start. But I think anything over 50%, unless it's going to be like a capital ship class, I'll probably just let finish. This is going to be done in a month and a half, and then you've got an extra sub to be able to go and annoy stuff.
I would also delete the converted cruiser hull and this in production cruiser. You don't really need those. Move the battleship, the 2 carriers, and the light cruiser to the bottom. These right here are most likely the only capital ships you'll build all game. Carriers, aside from my early starting carriers, I will never build more because carriers are pretty bad. Like, they still have their use, but in Man the Guns, they're just so ineffective. So, after moving these to the bottom, just finish out the queue early on, and this will be...
So basically the build, we're just completing all the light cruisers and destroyers. I pretty much agree. Leaving any of this onto one is probably debatable, but I guess that depends on how much, if any, of the research you put into your actual naval kind of variants. Like your float planes, you could be building some early tier search light cruisers that might be interesting. You could be building some trash tier torpedo boats, early destroyers, kind of glass cannon boats for your fleet. Maybe even like a secondary fleet. Kind of my gut feeling is I think the new kind of convoy hunting meta should be surface fleets. It takes the allies a lot of kind of micromanagement for the most part to hunt down a surface fleet. So you have a nice, quick, maybe cheap surface fleet, run around, sink some convoys, and then maybe after 2 weeks to a month, just pull them back, move them to a different area. Particularly if you're at a stage of the war where you're kind of sitting and waiting, and you've got time to micro like that, it can be extremely effective.
What your early game production queue looks like. From here, it's just all about building up until you get to war with China. Starting trade-wise, make sure you turn off trade with America. You're going to want your resources to come from the Axis, and make sure you get trade backs. So tell Germany how many factories you're sending him so he can send you those back and you don't lose any factories. Early on aluminum, I would recommend trading with Germany. Since this is an AI game, I'm going to trade with Manchukuo since you can get up to 80 resources for one factory, and I'd do the same when trading for steel. In a multiplayer game, rubber is going to come from Siam. Otherwise, most of your steel and aluminum should come from Manchukuo. On the subject of Manchukuo and Siam, your co-prosperity miners are going to fill quite a solid amount of roles, but essentially Manchukuo, focus-wise, they should do obedience, obviously, side of their focus tree. They should go down the right side of the tree to Log University, get some more civs. They can invite Japanese settlers too, and then go for obedience. Make sure they don't get collective farms until after the China War is over, since collective farms will add 1 building slot to every province they own. However, if you don't plan on giving them any land, they can...
Really, that's kind of interesting. So it's kind of not what the actual effect says, unless 4 others is less than what they actually own. That's kind of interesting.
Do it whenever they want, that's fine. The most important role of Manchukuo is, first off, to get the focuses that develop aluminum as well as steel. They want to research excavation techs as quickly as possible and stay always up to date, if not ahead of date with them, because they're going to be the majority of your resources. They're also going to do all of their decisions for steel and aluminum and other resources, and they're going to improve the infrastructure in these 2 provinces to 10 to give you as much resources as possible. They are essentially the sole reason you can stay on free trade, them and Siam. Military-wise...
Ah, interesting. So yeah, so it is confirmed. He's the free trade style of Japan. I do kind of like that.
Manchukuo's pretty flexible. It just depends on what you want from them specifically. I personally have them build Marines so they can help me island hop, and I mean more Marines on the field just helps in general. During the China War, I have them build a 14-4 Marine, which I'll lend lease them the equipment to build, and then just keep lend leasing them a few artillery a month to keep up with it. And I have them naval invade the ports over and over on China to get invader trait. From there, after the war in China, I have them garrison up north and maybe push with 20 to 40 withs if they can spare it. And other than that, I have them help garrison the eastern front or eastern coast of China and start naval invading some of the islands along with me to assist. Siam has a very important role in the co-prosperity sphere in that they are essentially your supply so you can push Malaya. They need, by the time 1941 rolls around, maximum infrastructure in both northern Malaya and Siam, and a level 10 airport in both. They also need a level 10 port either in the city of Hot Gai or just north of it. That way your troops will have enough supply down here to push into Malaya, as well as have air coverage from Siam and from here to push Malaya, especially since I also recommend building an airport over here once you take Indochina. That should give you enough air superiority to take British Malaya no problem. They are also going to be your launching off point to push into the British Raj, so hence the max infrastructure up here as well. Military-wise, I have them do a few roles. I normally have them build 14-4 Mountaineers. Also, side note, make sure most of your combat divisions are a 14-4. If you find yourself building a 7-2, stop. You've done something.
Yeah, I think all combat roles should be 40 with infantry. The only time should be basically if you're using it to help pin. That's that's the only time. I know as the UK, I send a fair bit of my 20 whiffs to the African campaign just to help fill out the line and cover ports, and I allow the Commonwealth to build all the elite troops. But if there's an opportunity to help widen the combat width by attacking into a flank or just helping to keep the org low of an Italian division. So I think what I'm trying to say is it is worth it to build 20 whiffs that can go into combat in an offensive role. You just got to know why you're doing it. If you can cover a line with 40 whiffs, that's highly recommended over 20s.
Wrong. If you find yourself building a 4-4 like the unnamed YouTuber who has still remained nameless, he knows who he is, who inspired me to make this guide, stop, turn around, think about what you're doing, rethink what you're doing, and ask yourself, are you throwing? The answer is most likely yes. I have them build 14-4 Mountaineers to help push the mountain tiles that the British Raj will likely hold. Once I'm past most of the mountains, I have them switch those Mountaineers to Marines as well, just to get as many Marines on the field as possible. Early on, naval-wise, you're just going to want to merge your fleets together and then start exercising your navy once it's all together. I would recommend giving about 2 to 3 factories to Romania and asking for trade backs to buy some oil in order to continue consistent naval experience. You'll run deficit once you're out of oil, but just keep exercising and you'll have consistent naval experience generation if you're trading for the oil. Political power-wise, you're going to want to start off grabbing a silent workhorse for that early political power, especially because you don't even make a full political power every day and you're going to want that boost. After you pick up your silent workhorse, you're going to take free trade. That way you can get the bonuses of construction speed and research speed that you desperately need. In order to make up for the resources that you're going to run deficit of, you're going to want to trade with Germany. Make sure you get your trade backs. Your third political power expenditure should be to grab the military theorist. After grabbing your military theorist, your next Political power expenditure should be to grab prioritized steel for guns for the extra military factories. Your next political power focus should be to take your industrial concern. You're going to want to use that in order to keep consistent with your industry. Your next political power buy is going to want to be agility-focused aircraft. Make sure you grab this before getting the zero.
Did I blank out for a little bit, or did the logistic advisor get picked up in silence? He's obviously grabbed it because he's going to war with China. Again, I think he's going for probably a pretty high-skilled build. I think if you're probably a little bit less, I don't know what's the right word, confident with your ability to fight China, you might end up grabbing more military stuff. But obviously, as you start gaining experience and gaining more confidence in doing so, this is definitely the right way to go. And the logistics is just to make sure you don't waste guns and other equipment attritioning while you're pushing into China.
If you don't have the political power yet for whatever reason, don't grab it, or don't grab the zero focus until you're sure you have it. That is very important. Your next political power after the agility-focused aircraft is prioritize naval aircraft construction to have a minus 20% construction cost on the zero. That'll let you put way less military factories on it than the Allies, but still keep pace with the Allies. Your next political power buy should most likely be the Pacific Fleet Designer.
Interesting. Alright, let's have a look here. Range is highly important. It'd be interesting to be able to have a look at the others. I know the coastal defense one is, looks like halve the range, but make it really cheap. Escort, I think, is the one where they make it more expensive for a little bit more range. Battle fleet, it's probably going to be like plus armor. So yeah, ooh, although it's blacked out, yeah, that's probably going to be a unique kind of plus armor battleship. Range is really good. Ranged exercise, no one really cares at the moment. So yeah, for Bake's build, where we're probably going to be going the torpedo bomber range, we're definitely going to be getting the range to help you there. But this is probably an interesting one if you want to be doing the battleship kind of idea. Interesting.
After this point, spend your political power as you will. In around April of 1937, you should have gotten your templates to the point where your infantry template that you're going to be using for your main pushing into China should look something like this, with your final support company, signal companies, well under research. Your other template should look something like this, the 20 width. Also keep in mind that if you followed the strat and every 5 Army XP upgraded this to a 40 width, you should have about 10 Army experience in stockpile, or left over, in April of 37. You're going to want to use that to put a signal company in your division. So it's at this time that you're going to want to start training up.
So I just wanted to grab this here. Depth charge level 2s. Level 1? Level 2s. Level 2s. This is probably really important for any nation that needs to control their trade going into their main ports, particularly island nations. So I noticed it, and I just really want to point it out, since Baked I don't think is going to be discussing it. It's worth, still early on in the game, invest in some upgrades to the variants of your ships. That way, while you've got the dockyards early, while you've got the years before you building up, before the big power move when you start unlocking the 1940 tech ships, invest some time in some research, get some of the upgraded early tier technology, and start building useful ships early.
Put a signal company in your division. So it's at this time that you're going to want to start training up your army. You're going to want to train to about 30 of your 40 widths and 30 to 36 of your 20 widths. Be sure to deploy these guys green. and then exercise them up to trained in order to get enough in the field to build your whole army quick enough. Once all your divisions are properly deployed and out in the field, you're going to want to start organizing them into several different armies under several different generals, because it's time to go to war with China. You should be well into the Marco Polo Bridge incident focus around this time, and if you did everything properly, you should have a sizable army that is back up to 60 divisions, believe it or not, and ready to take on China. First, you're going to want to make 24 of your 40-width divisions into one army, put them under Tomoyuki Yashida, put a front line right here. Second, you're going to put 18 of your 20-width divisions under this general right here. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. And you are going to put him on the Shaanxi border. Both of them are going to go underneath the Field Marshal Shunriko Hada. Next, your remaining 6 40 widths. Also remember to put them under the Field Marshal. Put them underneath the General Hitoshi Imamura. Then you are going to set each one up for separate naval invasions all along the coastline, which are going to be used to grind the invader trait. This one. From there, you're going to grab Amphibious and the Naval Liaison, and then he's going to become your primary Marine commander for your war with the Allies. This final army I like to put under Sashiro Itagaki. He's a good one, or just for his defense stat, because he's just mostly garrison. Once you have him in the army, you're going to want to put, or in command of the army, you're going to want to put 2 divisions, one in Dalian, one in the province next to Dalian. These 2 divisions, you're going to want to put them right there. These 2, put right there. These 2 should go there.
Now, what he's doing here, because I think maybe some people are not super familiar with what China's can do, might be wondering why you have to garrison places when you're going to have complete naval superiority. A kind of ballsy play that China's can do is try to go for paratroop drops and quickly take some islands and move within range to actually land on the home island of Japan. So it's the safe play, and I think I highly recommend it as well.
These 2 should guard here, and then these 2 there. This will prevent a China player from deciding that they want to kind of do some memes and put their air force up over mainland Japan or these islands and then paradrop you, because some Chinas will try that. Then you're going to want to go to the airport that you built up, and you're going to want to put an air wing, 2 air wings of 100 bombers in, and then every time you get another 100 bombers, create another air wing. You're also going to want to put up your fighters that you start with. Use your interwar fighters and your carrier fighters respectively. You're going to be moving these around a lot to counteract the Chinese Air Force and Chinese bombers, because he's going to try and bomb this port to cut off all your supply. As soon as you finish the Marco Polo Bridge incident, it's time to go to war with China. Make sure you have your divisions in the proper place and they are ready to go. You can set up offensive line if you wish at this river. You're not going to want to go beyond it. That's if you want to use the planning bonus. I personally don't think you need to, but it's up to you. You're going to want to push into Shaanxi a little bit with this army as well, though do it methodically and slowly. Your main goal is to grind infantry expert as well as many environmental traits for both generals as possible. Alright, you want to put your planes up in the air, your bombers, set them over to Nanjing to strategic bomb infrastructure in their capital to...
Yep, agreed. I was kind of assuming that this is likely what he was going to do, and I think it's pretty smart. From the UK's perspective, you can also do this against Germany if you've been able to get complete air superiority, and this can help slow down the Germans pushing into the Soviets during Barbarossa. pretty much my goal for a bombing campaign against the Germans is to ensure that instead of upgrading infrastructure as they move into the Soviets, they're constantly having to repair infrastructure, and the difference between the two can be a huge effect. So again, I think this is a pretty high skilled play and pretty important to do.
Attrition the Chinese troops. Then stop exercising your fleet, move it back to port, and make sure you're trading for about 2 to 3 factories worth of oil, depending on your research level. Also remember to continue building civilian factories all through the war. As soon as you declare war on China, you're going to want to just sit here and wait because of your Marco Polo Bridge incident debuff. See, gives you a minus 50% attack bonus against China, which is pretty hefty. So this is going to be where your next political power expenditure comes in. Escalate the war in China. You're going to want to take that. Then you're going to want to institute indiscriminate conscription. From now on, as soon as this decision pops up again until around mid-March, you're going to want to continue taking it until the debuff is gone. Only then do you want to start attacking. Finally, when you have your last decision to escalate the war incident in China, and you take it, it removes the debuff, it's time to attack China. You're going to want to move all the attack bombers you have over mainland China, set them to CAS as well as any close air support that you may have. Keep in mind the good China player will have anti-air, which is why most of your CAS will most likely be shot down, and attack bombers are superior because of their armor. It's also time to start your naval invasions of the coast. So have him go out and attack and start pushing into Tianjin.
Thanks, Paradox AI. Like, absolute terrible Paradox. From my own kind of experience, you're probably expecting something like 16, 20 whiffs to be sitting here. I believe most Japan's push here because you'll also be getting the shore bombardment from your own navy. Beijing itself obviously has the multiple province attacks. That's also a highly likely area. And sometimes if the China player hasn't put enough troops along the kind of side border here, that's kind of like the third likely area to push through. But that's kind of depending on what the China does. I'm interested to hear what Baked has to say.
If it wasn't an AI, it wouldn't have moved troops off, but obviously take advantage where you can. So you're going to attack Tianjin first, pin where you can, and go for as many encirclements as you can. A lot of times, if you're going up against a good China, you can end up getting bogged down in this little lip right here along the Yellow River. Don't get discouraged. Gather as many troops into this province right here as you can. Go over to your battle fleet, pull out all your battleships, and put them in the sea right here. That's going to give you the shore bombardment bonus. From there, you're going to want to attack this province across the river constantly. If it's a good China, they'll probably have this whole line stacked with infantry, and it'll be tough to break. But if given enough persistence and time, combining your CAS bonus, not attacking in any other battles, and waiting with just the battleship, you should be able to break and push across the river.
Probably my own thoughts here as well is if you've been able to use your bombers to actually start to lower the infrastructure around here. Having low infrastructure means that the organization will recover slower as well as possibly getting them to attrition. So that might be another way to kind of help in the stalemate situation while still basically maintaining the same strat of pushing across the river.
Based solely off your signal companies. Once you're across the river, you're going to want to disperse throughout.
Probably the other thing while I'm thinking about is as well, if you've been able to farm your invader trait, there's a trait locked behind it that's plus 25% shore bombardment. you might find that it be a useful, maybe naval invade directly onto it as well. Stretch out the combat width, get 25% more shore bombardment from all of your battleships. Just stack all your advantages that you have together.
Throughout China, and from here it's a slow, methodical push. Once you have Invader on your third army, make sure that you put him on the front as in a joint sort of force on this front line that you have. Build more 40 and 20 widths as needed to fill gaps in the line. Push down China, and then start pushing this direction. Taking Shaanxi is optional, and I personally recommend it just for traits, but you don't have to. It's not required since only China needs to capitulate to end the war. After you get a bit of army XP from the war,
I think also, like we saw before with the AI pushing into you, I think that's just nothing but an advantage to you. Let him punch himself out. You don't need to rush this war at all. Like Bake's, for the tutorial reasons, pushing this out to 39. Gain traits, push slowly, let them punch you out. Like, will punch themselves out. Let them tie themselves out. Lean against the ropes. You have the much bigger industry. Just going to be calm, slow, methodical. Know what's going on. Know where the weaknesses are in the line, and push to your advantage.
in China, it's time to start building up your marine divisions. This should be approximately what your template should look like. And this, combined with the other two templates, are the templates that you're going to want for the rest of the game. Make sure you build as many Marines as possible. Every time you have a chance to build a Marine, build one. Once you own all of China, if you've done your industry properly, you should have anywhere between 120 and 150 civilian factories. Depends on how much the AIs in China had, as well as how much you microed the industry. After that, it's time to start building dockyards and mills. You're going to want to start by building about, I'd say, you're going to build around 20 to 30 dockyards, but you're going to want to start queuing them up with the mills and dockyards sort of sporadically. So queue up a few dockyards, queue up a few mills, and queue up a few more dockyards. Try and build in your highest infrastructure provinces. And that should put about, there's good, and then from there you're just going to go straight mills. Make sure to watch how many mills or dockyards America has, because generally you want to have more or equal to America's dockyard count. This will come into play later in the war as you start to rapidly build up your navy in hopes of catching up to them, or at the very least staying on top of your naval production. After that, you want to make sure that you put as many factories on fighters and attack bombers. After you build up some of your mills and your dockyard counts, you're going to want to start building fuel silos in mainland China, as well as higher infrastructure areas to build them up a bit quicker. This is just because you're not going to really have the fuel to keep up with the Allies, and refineries just produce so little that it's not worth building them. So you're better off building silos and having a massive stockpile as big as you can to last you until you take Malaya and Dutch East Indies.
Probably throw a bit of, and my experience is the UK here. I usually with silos build till I have a fuel capacity of about 1 million. I fill that up before the war, and then I constantly trade 9 factories away for oil, and that more or less keeps the Royal Navy afloat, with this just kind of dipping back and forth depending on large naval battles or what's going on. So the Navy can use a hell of a lot of fuel, so this is an important trait to invest in before you go to war.
And get the oil from there. As your new mills and dockyards are coming in, your production queue should start to look something like this. With a large focus on planes, of course, because aircraft win the war. But you do want to make sure you're building up your equipment gains as well, so you can start to pump out more and more of your own divisions. Navally, this is you.
Baked, I want you to tell me about your variants. What you're using your air power for? Tell me. I know the answer, but probably something you should add to your guide if you're not going to yet. Um, for the fighters, obviously agility is the most important for Japan because you're going to be the aggressor. You want to make sure you have your range. I never upgrade the weapons for fighters because it lowers the agility. It might be worth it for fighters, for the Japanese ones because they get so much buffs to agility themselves. But I'd probably still say no, especially since you're going to be having a high level variant for your attack bombers. Um, for attacks, I basically upgrade range. Maybe bombing after that. I usually don't get enough air XP to fully max out a fighter and then go further into bombers themselves. But bombers are good enough by themselves. You just need to reach more airspace with them. So that's what I would use the two for.
Usually all I produce initially, maybe I'll add a few cruiser 3s in if I feel like I need to. However, for the most part, you can get away with the escort destroyers, torpedo cruisers, which let's take a look at the escort destroyer templates. Escort destroyer, torpedo cruiser, submarine 3. Early 1941 is when you should start looking to declare war on the Allies. Your goal in the war is to take the British Raj, invade Malaya and the Dutch East Indies, and most importantly, take this island from the UK so you can take all of the UK's rubber. That should significantly reduce Allied resource pools and cut off a lot of their trade, especially if you use your submarines to convoy raid all around these islands. After you take these islands in the Philippines, you want to push down into Australia and New Zealand and capitulate those two players. Or, if the Axis lose in Africa, once British Raj is dealt with, you can naval invade into Africa.
Yeah, like my own feelings here. I don't think it's even worth touching Australia or New Zealand. The if you've done this well that you've capitulate Raj, then yeah, I would say go straight for Africa at this point. Likely Australia and New Zealand have stayed in the Asia sphere, so you're probably already kind of encircled and crushed their armies, or pretty much you're just locking them down with your subs. Come across, maybe hit straight into South Africa, or just land straight here and take back North Africa. It may be a big battle. You might find a lot of French troops here, but maybe with your bombers, you've taken the Allied aircraft away from you. You might line this up like lots of little UK stuff here. Start pushing yourself here. Land when they look to do their D-Day. They'll be very distracted by it. Take here, invade into their D-Day. Like, that's kind of very late game, but try to be the thorn. Like, you don't want to, like, me as the UK, if we're D-Daying and pushing, I don't care if Australia falls. I don't care if New Zealand falls. I don't care if South Africa falls. You win the battle by hurting, you win the war by hurting the Germans. And more or less that's how most competitive multiplayer games goes. As the UK, you need to do damage to Germany. As Japan, you need to do damage to D-Day.
A lot of Japans would have the first impression that their goal should be to invade America. That's not so much true because America does have a lot of ships. Even when you take a lot or knock out most of their navy, it's still tough to land on their mainland, especially if they built tanks. You'll land and then get thrown off. What I like to do usually if I'm having a pretty good Japan game is I'll invade Hawaii and like the islands all in the sea to stop his naval range so his fleet can't reach me, and then I sort of wait and, like, you know, leave it there, stop there, because you've done your job. You should focus the...
I think maybe the Panama as well, because there'll be likely a fair bit of trade going through there. You might be able to catch a fair bit of his navy on the Atlantic side, depending on how familiar the Germany is with his naval game. But again, you know, you kind of got to decide strategically what's more important there. If they're gearing up for D Day, I wouldn't even do any of this island stuff. Start heading and pushing towards Europe. Start disturbing them from doing a D Day.
The allies over here in Europe, in Africa, and take this out. If you've taken a significant portion of Asia before D-Day happens, you'll have weakened Allied industry to a point where they either have to focus you or they can't D-Day, which will allow Germany to push into the Soviet Union. Do remember that a lot of servers will restrict where you can do this, but Kamikaze is your best way to contend with the American Navy. For example, on my server, I restrict it to these regions sort of around Japan. Anything outside of that, you know, Kamikaze Free America can place his Navy. I would recommend using your tactical bombers that you've been building all game to start to naval bombard outside of your naval kamikaze zone, as it's sort of like an umbrella where a good American player wouldn't risk putting his troops for fear of facing your wrath, as it will. To take Siam, you know, you throw your you're going to have an airport in Siam here as well as here. I throw my TAC bombers in here and about 2,000 fighters here. Throw the fighters up over mainland Malaya, and then throw the TAC bombers up as well. Make sure you build up the airports around here. Have the TAC bombers bomb the airport. If the server allows a Netherlands player and there's just too many planes, don't worry about it. You're going to lose all your planes before you can make a dent in bombing the airport and pushing. So what you should do instead is wait, keep your planes up over mainland Siam, use your TAC bombers as cast to push into Raj, and use your submarines to convoy raid around British Malaya, destroying all supply they have, after which you can just push once their units are fully attritioned. That's the alternative, and that's also the best.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. This Straits of Malacca, this is the sea tile for the Pacific fight. Who controls this sea tile controls the Pacific. Basically, why do we fight in the Pacific? The only reason why we fight in the Pacific is to maintain the rubber. We maintain the rubber because we want to maintain the air superiority. If the Allies lose air superiority, they cannot D-Day. Your goal should always, like, the thought in the back of your head should always be, how can I negatively affect the Allies' D-Day? And this is the answer. Rubber, resources, and a big connective tissue between these resources and Europe is this sea tile right here. Very, very important. Cannot emphasize it any more than I just did.
Best way to take Philippines and many of these islands is to convoy raid and get rid of all the supply on those islands so the Allies can't reinforce. Anyway, that concludes this guide to Japan. Hope you learned something. There aren't that many guides out there, and obviously there's going to be people with differing opinions. I expect that. Anyway, guys, I hope this was informative and you maybe learned something a little bit about Japan and kind of what goes into playing it. I actually had a lot of fun making this video, and hopefully I'll get to make some other videos of the other majors. Anyway, peace out. Remember to like the video or I castrate All Might.
So, what did I think of the guide? I actually think it was pretty good. I think we more or less mirrored our conversations. I did like how you kind of discussed the strategic value of what Japan does. I think you could probably emphasize a few things more there, but more or less you cover stuff. Like I said, my own kind of example, if I did a UK build, it'd probably be 6 parts, half hour long each. But nope, I think it's a very good guide. It's probably something that I'm definitely needing to try out myself. And I don't think I heard a single thing wrong. Now, this could just be because we're a part of the same server, so a lot of our own discussions end up concluding to the same thing, or else we'll end up debating it down to an answer. But I don't think you can really see anything objectively wrong with what what was said. Everything's down to just your style of play. I think if you follow this guide, you would be able to play a good Japan in a competitive game. Um, yeah. Any last comments? Probably not. I would love to see a guide where it's purely the naval side of it for the Pacific theater. I think I already touched a little bit by what is the major sea tiles, but I find with taking over zones of influence, there's a real steps and procedure to it. Like you rarely ever just, all right, that's mine now. That's mine now. It's air coverage, bombing, weakening them, watching for them to go back and repair, port striking, moving in some subs to test the zone, moving in your main fleet or a patrol fleet, having your fleet on strike. There's lots of systematic approaches when it comes to having a really strong naval game where you you make the enemy feel like there's nothing they can do. You're just zoning them out, pushing them back, and they feel like at no point they can actually have a good engagement against you. I'd really like to hear your opinion and see a guide from that point of view. Anyway, thanks for anyone who actually is interested in listening to my reaction and commentary over Bake's guide. As I've said before, I think it's actually a very good guide, the best one that I've seen, probably not just for Japan, but in total. Probably the last kind of guide I've seen of this caliber is maybe Kane, when he was talking about the Alamein guides way back, old meta, old patches. But I think this is a very good guide. I'd like to hear more from countries, but also delve deep. Do like it'll be interesting to see like a really in-depth half-hour guide on just the China War or the opening months to Barbarossa. I think there's a real space to have really detailed guides about very key specific parts within the game, not only from the kind of micro, macro build up to these points, but then the strategic decision making of the leaders of the each faction, allies, Axis, and the co-conspiracy sphere. So I'll sign out here, and I hope to see some more guides from Baked very soon.